From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Julian Assange has said he wants to cooperate with Swedish authorities after the Scandinavian country said it will reopen an investigation into allegations of rape. The Swedish investigation started in 2010 after two women accused Assange of sexual assault. The case was dropped in 2017. Assange says he wants to collaborate with the investigation and clear his name. The Wikileaks founder is also facing extradition to the United States after the organization revealed U.S. war crimes committed in Iraq.
Under förutsättning att Julian Assange häktas.
Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, has more.
Sweden's state prosecutor said on Monday that it would reopen an investigation into a rape allegation made against the journalist and founder of Wikileaks, Julian Assange. In a press conference, the prosecutor, Eva Marie Persson, said that she would be looking to re-establish the investigation and conclude it, and would seek Assange's extradition under using a European arrest warrant. Now, Assange was expelled from the Ecuadorian embassy where he had sought refuge since 2012 and had been afforded the status of political asylum under the Correa government. Now, under Lenin Moreno's presidency, this was revoked with the government saying that he had, amongst other things, charging him of espionage, charges which the Wikileaks founder and the organization has denied. Since then, he's been in Belmarsh prison, high security prison in the UK, and the US has also initiated proceedings to extradite him. Now, in response to today's announcement, the Wikileaks editor-in-chief has said that he welcomes the chance to clear his name. So today, the Swedish prosecutors have announced that they will be seeking Assange's extradition to Sweden to face the reopening of these investigations into rape allegations.
And the Attorney General of Ecuador will deliver all of Assange's personal materials to the United States, according to a report by the Spanish newspaper El País. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, has the details.
Good morning. A new action against Julian Assange has been taken by the Ecuadorian authorities. The Attorney General of Ecuador has allowed to deliver all of Julian Assange's material to the United States. Computer, documents, mobile phones, member units and other devices of the founder of Wikileaks, Julian Assange, will be submitted to the American authorities. This decision came after a judicial cooperation between Ecuador and the United States, where the Ecuadorian authorities allowed the U.S. authorities to take a statement from the diplomatic employees at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. This decision were rejected by the Julian Assange's lawyer, Carlos Poveda. His lawyer in Ecuador rejected this decision, and also he has filed an objection against this decision. He said that the Ecuadorian authorities are violating Julian Assange's rights.
That was Denise Herrera from Quito. And the Citizen Revolution movement in Ecuador is calling on authorities to investigate Swiss bank accounts allegedly linked to the wife of President Lenin Moreno. Our correspondent Denise Herrera has more.
Since the accusations against him came to light through the INA Papers case, the Ecuadorian president has rejected any connection with the offshore company or alleged assets in tax havens. Opposition and government lawmakers are waiting on the unfolding matter.
We believe that he has made a good decision. We should remember that we've already denounced it, but we also want to clarify a few things. We are still very much interested. There is total transparency, and we are supporting the movement and our president's decision.
I think it was a good initiative that has taken a long time, but that must be the position of a president. We in the Fiscalization Commission have already finished our report that is now in the Legislative Administration Council, and we hope it will go to the Assembly very soon.
Meanwhile, the Citizen Revolution movement is questioning whether President Moreno is being as transparent as he claims to be. The lawmakers also are criticizing the General Prosecutor's Office.
We strongly condemn any use of tax havens by public officials. It's prohibited by law. And this matter allegedly involving the head of the state is now in the hands of the Attorney General. It's clear this was a strategic move on the part of Moreno, because the evidence was presented many weeks ago, and what Moreno is doing right now is trying to appear transparent. But he has taken this stance only because the country is watching. Ecuadorians are outrightly rejecting corruption. The people are outraged that a president may be involved in illegal, corrupt activities.
During his tenure, President Moreno has been very emphatic in his disagreement with companies linked to tax havens. Now, the Citizen Revolution movement has requested that authorities investigate bank accounts held by the president's wife in Switzerland. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
In other news, a German NGO vessel dedicated to rescuing migrants in the Mediterranean Sea set sail once again on Saturday. The Sea-Watch 3 had been barred from leaving the French port city of Marseille, but the blockade was lifted by a Dutch court. Civil agencies have vowed to continue rescuing those at sea, even as the European Union adopts deadly anti-migrant policies in the Mediterranean. They seek to prevent those fleeing violence and poverty from reaching its shores. And the decision that allows Sea-Watch 3 to attend a distress signal recorded off the coast of Libya when a boat carrying 80 migrants, including a woman in labor, capsized, increasing chaos in the North African country following the 2011 NATO-led intervention, is forcing hundreds of people to seek refuge in Europe. Rescue organizations said at least 70 migrants drowned last Friday, attempting to cross into Europe from Tunisia.
In a large boat. We sailed a little bit, then they put us in a small boat, a small Zodiac. There were 75 of us. We sailed a little bit more than because of how many people were on the boat. The Zodiac started filling up with water. It then sunk and capsized. This was 12 o'clock at midnight. We kept floating in the water until 8 o'clock in the morning. A small Tunisian boat then came to our rescue. They came and took us along with the Tunisian army. Thank God we are here in Tunis. Thank God.
Sea-Watch also denounced Libyan authorities for breaching international law when they boarded a ship registered in Gibraltar, removing at least 3 migrants. The EU is incentivizing the Libyan Coast Guard to intercept boats in the Mediterranean and return migrants to dangerous conditions in Libya, spending millions of dollars in doing so. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. Telesur documentaries. Sundays. Only on Telesur.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. We continue reporting. We have Venezuela. It hosted the second National Day of Dialogue with more than 400 community assemblies participating. The event took place in the state of Táchira, where various social movements presented their proposals. Officials have collected around 12,000 proposals around the country. These proposals aim to improve the implementation of the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela through social programs, infrastructure development, and public services. Several organizations have signed a letter sent to senior U.S. and UN figures demanding an end to the siege at the Venezuelan embassy in the United States. They include the president of the Lawyers Guild, the American Jurists Association, and the director of the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund. They condemn the cutting off of electricity, blockade of food, and police complicity with the Venezuelan opposition. They addressed the letter to the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, law enforcement officials, and the UN Special Rapporteur on the negative impact of unilateral measures on human rights. Another social leader was killed on Saturday in Colombia. The anthropologist Luis Manuel Salamanca, 64 years old, was shot outside his house. Local media say unknown assailants shot him twice, killing him immediately in Colombia. In Colombia, of course, there are 569 social leaders being killed since the peace agreement was signed in 2016. Social movements claim Ivan Duque's government is not adopting any policies to stop the murders. Let's hear from our correspondent, Jose Manuel Jimenez, who has more on this latest killing.
There is
no let-up in the genocide against social leaders here in Colombia, and this systematic killing of local representatives and spokespeople that social movements have been condemning goes on. In the last few hours, we learned of the murder of Luis Manuel Salamanca, who was over 60 years old and a well-known cultural figure and anthropologist in the department of Huila. He was killed in the Yalcones neighborhood of San Agustin. With this latest murder, social movements say that the number of leaders assassinated this year has reached more than 54 across the country. During the government of President Ivan Duque, since the 7th of August last year, that number has risen to over 160. They include indigenous and Afro-Colombian leaders, as well as campesinos, trade unionists, and other community leaders. The situation is just getting worse, and the government is not taking the necessary steps. It seems it does not see this as an important issue to secure peace in the interior of the country. The social movements fear that the problem could get worse as we are approaching regional elections, and in the history of Colombia, this is a time when such killings have often intensified. There have been no serious investigations, none of the authorities are taking responsibility, and we continue to see a social leader murdered approximately every 2 days.
Jose Manuel Jimenez from Colombia. And we continue in the country. A leader of the ELN's Camilo Cienfuegos Commission, Adalberto Fuentes Rangel, known as Darío, was killed in a combat against Colombian army troops on Saturday. Darío had been in the organization for more than 16 years, and he was 32 years old. 3 other members of the National Liberation Army, who were part of the security team of Fuentes Rangel, were also captured in that same operation. Regional elections took place in Argentina prior to October's general election. The latest to vote was Córdoba State, one of the key districts for Mauricio Macri's triumph back in 2015. The current governor, Peronist Juan Schiaretti from the Federal Alternative Party, won the re-election with more than 25 points to that of his main challenger. The election in Argentina's second biggest state means Macri's party suffers its 8th defeat in 2019 alone. A congressman from Argentina has died from his wounds in the hospital 3 days after he was shot. Héctor Olivares was shot outside Congress on Thursday, following the same fate of another official, Miguel Marcelo Yandón, who died on the spot. The attackers were arrested, but the reasons of the murder are still unknown. After the shooting, police raided one of the aggressors' home and found the weapon. Official sources say it was a random crime. The government announced 2 days of mourning. In Mexico, a group of migrants said to be deported escaped from an immigration center after a fire broke out. According to officials, this was deliberately started overnight at the center in Tapanatepec, where over 100 Central American migrants were held, many of them awaiting deportation. No one was seriously injured, but officials couldn't determine the number of people who escaped. This comes as Mexico's president is shifting to a tougher tone on handling the migrants that are heading to the United States. At least 5 men have been killed so far in 2019 after being deported to Jamaica from the United Kingdom. Many more deportees are now fearing for their lives. The UK acted despite strict rules prohibiting deportations to countries in which an individual's life may be in danger. The victims were among the first people to be deported after the 2018 Windrush scandal, where children of Caribbean parents who came to live in the UK between 1948 and 1971 were detained and deported for not having citizenships despite never knowing a home outside of the UK. South African President and African National Congress leader Cyril Ramaphosa has thanked supporters for voting for his party. The ruling ANC has been declared winner of the general election in South Africa, in a vote which was conducted peacefully for the most part. The ANC secured 58% of the votes, ahead of the Democratic Alliance, which received 21%. The economic freedom fighters came in third with 11%, with a leftist agenda, garnering significant support. President Ramaphosa called on the people to build a united South Africa. And we spoke to political analyst Imran Bukus about the outcome of last week's election in South Africa.
The ANC has been in power for about 25 years, and the history of Africa teaches us that liberation movements that come to power start to get pushed to the periphery 2, 3, 4 decades into liberation or into democracy. So I think, what's happening to the ANC is not surprising. I think the ANC has long mobilized its liberation history to get votes, but I think that romance of the liberation is wearing out. So younger people are less interested in how long people were in the struggle and are more interested in, getting jobs, having the street lights working and the potholes fixed. But in South Africa, where the majority is a Black African population, and in a context where over 50% of South Africans are under 30, and the vast majority of that group is unemployed and desperately poor. And what the EFF uses is crude populism. And that populism that the EFF uses is seductive, is inviting, and I think really large numbers of young, particularly Black youth, are turning to the EFF.
Also in South Africa, the country plans to appeal a ruling against Olympic champion Caster Semenya, who lost her case, challenging new rules forcing female athletes to regulate their testosterone levels. Coming into effect on May 8th, the rules say female athletes with elevated testosterone will have to take hormone-suppressive medication if they wish to compete as women in certain races. The decision by the Court of Arbitration for Sport sparked global outrage, as many see it having a racist undertone. It also raised debates about gender, especially regarding athletes with differences in sexual development. Millions of voters in the Philippines have cast their ballots in the midterm elections that are expected to strengthen President Rodrigo Duterte's power in Congress. Voters elected half of the 24 seats in the Senate. Polls show that candidates endorsed by Duterte are likely to win. There are 61 million voters who are also set to vote for 18,000 other positions in local government and in the House of Representatives.
It's very important to vote because this is for the younger generation who will also get to vote soon, like my children. I hope that they will do the same. Today we will vote for our new leaders and hoping that this could end corruption.
We have more stories coming up. Stay with us.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. On Monday, only on FtS.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on FtS.
Welcome back. Saudi Arabia has said that 2 of its oil tankers were sabotaged at the United Arab Emirates port of Fujairah on Sunday. Local authorities haven't provided details of the sabotage, and Iran's foreign ministry has called for further clarification about the events. A senior Iranian lawmaker, Heshmatollah Falahat Pishe, said that it is an indication of fragility in the Persian Gulf, warning that third parties may be seeking to push the region into conflict. The rhetoric between Iran and the United States has intensified as the U.S. sends an aircraft carrier to the Middle East region. A senior Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander said that the deployment is an opportunity and a target rather than a threat. The U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton said last week that the USS Abraham Lincoln set sail as a response to specific intelligence on Iran, but failed to specify further, while official Navy records stated that the ship had actually left port some weeks previously. A former television journalist has been killed in Afghanistan by unknown assailants. Mina Mangal was an advisor to the Afghan parliament in Kabul and was shot dead on her way to work on Friday. Mangal used to report for prominent TV station Ariana News. There was no immediate word on a motive for this attack. The Spanish National Court has decided to extradite former Peruvian Supreme Court Judge Cesar Inostroza. He faces corruption charges and will be tried for being the ringleader in a scandal involving influence peddling and the sale of lighter sentences. If convicted, he could be sentenced up to 38 years in prison. He fled Peru last October, but was soon arrested in Spain. Sudanese protesters have been tear gassed by security forces as talks on a power transfer resume in Khartoum. Security forces use repressive tactics on protesters, demanding a transfer of power to a civilian-led transition team. A sitting outside the army headquarters in Khartoum continues, with roadblocks being regularly reinforced.
There have been attempts to break and open the barricades to stop the sit-ins, but my revolutionary brothers, we will stay steadfast and face them. We will not retreat, even at the cost of blood.
Protesters in the capital are also protesting against electricity cuts. On the other side of Khartoum, demonstrators are reported to have mounted trucks at the electricity company to protest against cuts to the service that have left them without power during the month of Ramadan. Meanwhile, lawyers have opened proceedings against the incarcerated former President Omar al-Bashir and other former leaders. Sudanese lawyers have started legal proceedings against the leaders of the former government on charges of orchestrating a military coup in 1989. The lawyers presented the petition to the Attorney General on Saturday. Now to Nigeria. Former President Goodluck Jonathan has rejected bribery accusations against him. The government has accused the former president and his then oil minister of accepting bribes to broker a $1.3 billion oil deal 8 years ago. Jonathan dismissed the claims as falsehoods and a cheap, predictable ploy by the government to tarnish his reputation. In Yemen, Houthi troops have agreed to unilaterally withdraw forces from 3 key ports in Hodeidah, paving the way for political negotiations. The United Nations said the group has agreed to stop fighting and redeploy the troops within 4 days. The move is geared towards supporting a peace deal brokered in Sweden last December. Under the agreement, pro-government forces are also expected to withdraw before a second phase in which both sides pull back even further. And before we go, we leave you with a song by Jamaican reggae group Overground Reggae-lution called Hands Off Venezuela. The band joined the international community's call for non-intervention in Venezuela's affairs. We hope you enjoy it.
Mr. Donald Duck, yeah, got to tender now and hands off Venezuela, Mr. Donald Duck. We don't need no war, we don't need no war. You better stay far, stay far. Oh gosh, you minister the war. Oh no, you better stay far, stay far, stay far. We're eliminating poverty, standing up for humanity. This is the part of our history, God, in this time of reality. Oh God, hands off Venezuela, Mr. Donald Duck. Hands off Venezuela, Mr. Donald Duck. You chump your call.